Terrible screams echoed over the strait for a long time, until finally the unfortunate drowning men were swallowed by the darkness and icy water. It was impossible to escape, and the heir to the throne of England and the whole color of British chivalry perished. One day, November 25th, 1122, England lost its future, and for a long time could not recover from the tragedy. And it all began when the Norman Duke William defeated King Harold II and conquered the island. He put the ancient crown of the Anglo-Saxons on his head by right of the strongest. However, this power still had to be retained, and to ensure the continuation of the lineage. Fortunately for William, his enemies suffered one defeat after another, and succession could be guaranteed by sons. But there was one problem. William's eldest son, named Robert, named after his Norman grandfather, Robert the Devil, had a congenital peculiarity. He was not exactly a dwarf, but a man of very short stature. And of course, in times that did not recognize tolerance, this Robert was subjected to all sorts of ridicule. He was given offensive nicknames, Robert Short Pants, Robert Short Shoe, without paying the slightest attention to his royal origin. Being different, even if it was not a pronounced ugliness, was a sentence in the 12th century. A king father was ashamed of his son. Game of Thrones fans will easily find an analogy with Tyrion Lannister, who was also shamed and despised by his own father. Robert, just like Tyrion, was kept out of important matters by his father. As a boy, he was refused to go hunting, as if he were in poor health, which was not true at all, and when Robert grew up, the king proclaimed his second son William as his heir and future king. The conqueror could not imagine a dwarf on the throne even in a terrible dream. Most likely, William I would gladly deprive his son of any inheritance at all, because he thought he was on the way to becoming a monk. But the Norman barons intervened. The King of England was also the Duke of Normandy. So in Rouen, they said firmly, the island has its own laws, and we will not interfere in them. There the king can do what he wants. But in Normandy, the principle of succession is strict. Whoever is the eldest must rule. So no second or third son can override the elder. This is the situation in which Robert was proclaimed Norman ruler. Soon William the Conqueror died. According to his will, his second son, who was perfectly healthy and tall, was proclaimed King William II of England. Deprived of the throne, Robert immediately began to intrigue against his brother, to a certain extent causing sympathy among many Englishmen. For a decade and a half the brothers fought each other. There were an open military clashes and the underworld struggle. As an ally sometimes attracted the French king, and then fought with him. Finally, there was something resembling peace. Robert even decided to join the crusade, handing over the rule of Normandy to his brother William for the time being. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief that at last the conqueror's heirs had found common ground. The march proved difficult and full of hardship. Robert was badly wounded, and on the way back stopped in Salerno, at the insistence of the doctors. He needed rest and rest. And just at that moment news came from England of the death of William II. The king had been killed by a foolish hunting accident. The king was stalking a deer with a nobleman named Tyrrell. Tyrrell fired a shot, but hit the king. What did Robert do? He immediately proclaimed himself the next English monarch. Now justice had to be done. He hurried to London, only to be outdone by his younger brother Henry. This time, without logic or law, Robert returned to Normandy and began to organize a campaign. He intended to reclaim the throne by fire and sword, but luck turned against him. Near Alton, Robert was defeated, forced to surrender, and then gave up the crown in exchange for monetary compensation. He was exhausted by war and disease, except that Henry had deceived his brother. After convincing the Duke of Normandy that he would no longer fight against him, the King of England gathered an army, attacked Rouen, and captured Robert. 28 years, until his death, the rightful heir to the English crown spent in confinement. And all that time he cursed his brother. Robert's son, William Cleton, was left free. The 17-year-old avenged his father with every means at his disposal. He organized mutinies in Normandy. He twice tried to kill his uncle with the help of hired assassins. He made a treaty with France, and finally, he gathered a good army. In the year 1120, everything collapsed. The French flatly refused to further support the prince. Military successes were replaced by defeat. The decisive blow to William was struck by William Adeline, heir to the English king. It was to be a triumphant return to the homeland. Prince William Adeline hired the fastest, most modern, and most technologically advanced ship for the 12th century. It was called the White Ship. On the other shore, a grand welcome was being prepared. It seemed to the heir to the throne that the ship was not moving fast enough. He was very drunk and hardly realized what might happen. A categorical order was given to increase speed. Who could contradict the future king? Speed was increased, and at full speed, the White Ship struck an underwater rock. It went down with terrifying speed. All were lost. The prince, the young heirs of the finest English families, the military leaders, the king's retainers, except Captain Fitzstephen. He managed to get ashore, but when he imagined how he would look in the face of King Henry, maddened, threw himself back into the sea and drowned himself. England was left without a prince. Many called it God's punishment, the result of Robert's curse. For almost 40 more years in the kingdom was turbulent, until, finally, on the throne was not established King Henry II. But that is another story.